Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is me. It is the one, the only, the Cyber Warrior. And thank you for joining us tonight at CyberWarriorStudios once again presents Security Happy Hour. We got an amazing show planned for you today, and I hope you stick around for the entire episode. Without further ado, though, I'll be back in a minute. And we're back. And once again, yes, it is me. It is the Cyber Warrior. With me, as always, I have my partner in crime, my friend, my brother. I have the Cyber Papa. Cyber Papa, how you doing today, brother?
Doing amazing. It's been an exciting week for us, so I can't wait to tell you all the news, but what a week. What a week. And Friday, and we have an amazing guest here, a good friend of ours, Mr. Keep It Techie.
Yes, we have Keep It Techie, Joshua Lacy here with us today. Keep It Techie. Do you prefer Josh or Keep It Techie? What do you want today? I mean, you're kind of really.
Oh, Josh is fine. Yeah, I normally go by Josh. Yep.
So Josh,
the one and only Keep It Techie. I like it. I like it.
Right. So Josh, today's episode, me and you talked. You sent in your request, and it was Linux and IT. And now, to me, both of those things are vital to cybersecurity, whether it's communication, working in it, whatever the case may be. So, to get us started, what really is your take on how IT can really help you propel your career?
Well, it's just IT is an excellent, an excellent area to work in my opinion. And I've been doing it for a number of years. I've been working in the IT field for about 16 years or so, and working in different positions. And it's just so many different jobs out there, and it's a part of a whole bunch of industries that you can actually work in, when it comes to IT. And like I said, I've been doing it for a very long time. I've worked as a network administrator, worked as a systems administrator as well. It's just I don't know. It's just an awesome, area. It's super cool, especially if you enjoy computers, electronics, and all things tech. It's an excellent, field to actually work in.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's funny because there's a lot of people that I've met that are transitioning, right? Whether from some other career field into cybersecurity. Although, talking with Kevin, there's in Kev Tech, man, there's so many transitioning into IT from other career fields. So, I'm one of the very few that my entire career has been IT, help desk, sysadmin, networking, all the way up the chain. So, knowing that, is there in your eyes, actually, before we get into that question, what got you into IT? Was it you came up in it, or was it something that you were like, as you got older, decided to come into? How did you get into IT?
Okay, cool. Yeah. Let me go down there and break that down, because I wasn't sure how long you wanted me to go on the first question, but let me get into it.
You just keep talking as long as you want, brother. I got you.
Okay, cool. So I've always been into computers. Ever since my parents got our first family computer that we shared, back in the 90s. And I don't know, I was just fascinated with the computer, using different programs, playing around with the terminal a little bit, video games, obviously. Most people start off with that. You know what I'm saying? And
did you come up in the DOS era like myself, or was your first computer Windows 3.1? Where
XP.
did you start? XP?
It was somewhere around XP time frame, or 98. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. I think it was 98. That we had on our family computer. But they did have a computer lab at school. That's the school that I went to. So I was able to play around with the systems there as well. But I typically, I remember one of the things I started doing was when the whole music sharing stuff was going on, like
Yeah.
Share Bear and all that stuff. Where I used to download music, and I don't know how far you want me to go into that, but I would download music and sell the CDs, to classmates and friends and stuff like that. Share music, create little mixtapes and all that stuff for
Yep.
different people. So that was one of the things I used to do. But I just got real good with understanding how to use and operate the system. And so when I graduated, though, I didn't look at that as a career, or I didn't see that as something I thought I would do, because my dad, he actually worked at a chemical plant. I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Very small town or whatever, and not many like IT jobs. And I always looked at it like I would never leave, that city. You know what I'm saying? So the the jobs that you can make a good amount of money were at the chemical plants. And so that's kind
Wow.
of where I thought I was gonna go. But then a friend of mine was like, "Hey, I'm looking at joining the army. You think you might want to look into it as well?" And he told me all about it. And so um I was like, "Hey," after reviewing it, and the recruiter, telling you all these wonderful things that are supposed to happen when you get there,
Oh, we've all
I
been
fell for
there.
it. Yeah,
We've all been
and
lied to.
joined. Yeah, and joined, and but I went reserve side so I can come back home. But once I got into the military, I still didn't know what I really wanted to do, until I ran into another friend of mine that was going to a technical school. And I hadn't thought about working on computers or doing anything computer related, um, like in the tech field, until I ran into it and I found out about this program that was given they had at Remington College. And so I said, "Hey, sign me up. I was always good with computers. Maybe this is something, it was kind of like the path of least resistance that I took, because I already understood the computer. I mean, like programs and all that stuff. I got real good with Excel, because that's something that the military uses a whole lot when it comes to tracking stuff. And I was a logistics guy in the military, so Excel was you really learn Excel, to the point of being almost an expert, especially if you're trying to get your job done properly. But real good with that. So I said, "Hey, sign me up." Path of least resistance, hopped into that program, finished it, got my first job, and it was crazy. I finished it in 2 years. It was a 2-year program. I got a computer networking degree. Um, and I had got married during that time period, and we decided to move to Las Vegas, Nevada. Um, so sent out my resume, to a whole bunch of jobs before we actually moved out there. And right off, someone hit me up and they hired me over the phone. It was crazy, as a systems administrator. And I was like, that's kind of a high end position, so to speak. Especially nowadays. I mean, you have to work your way up to be a systems administrator, especially if you don't have any experience. And all I had was
Yeah.
the school. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? But they gave me a chance, and I got that first job, and I just been running ever since. Um, as soon as I got that job, I did awesome in that position. I was able to get another job that allowed me to work for a school, a startup of a school, and they had a bad network, a bad setup. I went in and reconfigured a lot of stuff, cleaned up the patch panels, all that stuff I learned in school. I brought with me, and I was able to get, on the job experience as well, doing all this stuff. And so I don't know. I just got a passion. I got hooked. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And
Yeah.
I continued down that road, working in different positions. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, definitely, man. I'm like right there with you because where you kind of got into computers, with Windows 98. Like I said, I started with like DOS and Windows 3.1, and
Okay.
Eric started with the original tablet, with the Stone that came back, and that
Oh
was his
yeah.
first computer. But I've been in IT kind of like you since you were younger, and things like that. You kind of come up in it. And so I know the passion behind it, and I can feel that because, it's something where some people get into this for money, and they're like, oh, there's money in security or there's money in IT, and so they have, which, hey, everybody has their reasons. Whatever your reason is, you go with it. As long as it can force you and pushes you to keep learning and growing and things like that, then whatever's going to give you that drive to keep coming up in the field. But I've always gotten the feeling that, and again, it may just be me, that if you're chasing money, you're never going to really learn. You're going to learn what you need to know to kind of get by, and not what you need to excel. Just what you need to make the next buck. And so I find that's always with me. It's always an issue when I see people like, oh, I got into this for money. Okay. Are you going to keep learning, growing? Like, where are we going with this? Like, is that the only reason you're here? Because I think when you put those limits on yourself to just money, you limit your willingness to take in knowledge, and kind of grow with people. So,
and I 100% agree with that. Like, when you get into the IT field, you basically have to put on a mindset that you constantly want to learn new things, because technology is constantly changing. It's new technology is always coming out, so you have to stay on top of it in order to excel. And it's not just the money; it's about what you can gain as far as knowledge and just learning technology. You have to have a passion for it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I actually talk about that all the time. If I had not kept on learning through the years after 33 years, half of the things that I started with are in actual museums, technology museums. So, it was Fortran. Yep, you're right. Infinite, Fortran, Pascal. We had computers that were the size of a room, changing reel to reel drives. And, that's if you don't keep on learning every 3 to 5 years, that technology that you're using is antiquated. So I love people that say, well, I'm an expert, 30-year veteran doing this. It's like, dude, no, that technology has been around for 5 years. We're all the same level, so.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, even those, the only ones that I will ever give credit to that mastered their craft and stuck with it are those that knew like COBOL code, because banks still used that up until about 2 years ago. There were still banks with like the old black screen
COBOL.
green writing COBOL like program, machines. So like they were still looking for them. So they hung on for a while. They lasted a lot longer than normally people would in the industry. But no, I mean, that leads me to a little bit, because you're doing a lot of big things in Linux. A lot of big things in Linux. I mean, I have my passion and love of Linux and kind of the things that I do, but I don't compare to your level. I mean, I've got my own little Linux basic for hackers, like Tech Tuesday videos I'm doing right now, but your level goes beyond mine. So what got you into Linux? Because you said you started with Windows 98, roughly. So
Yeah.
what drove you to go the open source route of like kind of navigating into the Linux side of things?
Okay, so back to what we were about as far as passions. Um, um, One of the reasons the reason I got into Linux, my first position that I got as a systems administrator. That's why I kind of wanted to highlight that one. I was working with another systems administrator, and he set up portions of the network using Linux. He had a Linux router, the firewalls and all that stuff was running, Linux. Certain servers that certain web servers that he had set up using Linux. Because granted, this was a small company, so they didn't have a big IT budget, so to speak. So a lot of things were ran on standard desktops in certain cases.
Check me out.
Where we had strict servers and everything, just and it was all Linux. They had a couple Windows servers, and that's what the other systems administrator was lacking on. He didn't understand domain controllers and all that stuff, and so that's why they took that chance with me to get into it. Well, I taught him Windows. We made like a somewhat of a pack. I would teach him some of the stuff I knew on Windows servers that I learned from school, and he started teaching me about Linux because, like I said, that passion. You know, you got to have a passion for new things or learning new things. And I just got the Linux bug once he started showing me everything you can do with the Linux operating system. And yeah, we dove into it deep too, because come to find out, the person I worked with stayed like 2 minutes from my house in the same apartment complex. So we'll be up at nights, you know, going over Linux and going over Windows. And I had a lab back then, you know, it was just some old desktop computers, but we had you know, our little lab set up, and he would, you know, show me things he was doing, and I would show him things I was doing. And like I said, it just became a passion. And then I end up leaving that job, and I kind of lost contact with him for a minute. Well, YouTube became the source of information, because I'm not a I can read a book and understand it, but I'm not a book person. I can't retain it to the point where I could just sit here and do it, you know, by just reading the book. I have to watch or see tutorials on certain things. And so YouTube became something that I would do. And so I would watch other Linux YouTubers to understand, you know, get a better understanding of the Linux operating system. And I, you know, subscribed, you know, all that stuff, supported and all that stuff. And I was like, once I got to the point where I understood a lot of it, I was like, hey, I can make videos too, you know, just showing people my journey, showing people what I've learned, or showing people how I figured out a problem that I ran into on Linux. And so that's what I did. I just started, it started off with, like, I started getting into Raspberry Pis. So my first video was dealing with a Raspberry Pi, or no, a web server, but the second one was a Raspberry Pi, and setting up some I can't remember the name of it. I think I had to remove that video, but it was basically setting up an operating system on Raspberry Pi, walking people through how to do it.
Raspbian.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it wasn't what, I can't remember which one it was, but yeah, I know what you're talking about, Raspbian. That's the main one, the
Yeah.
main distribution that's for Raspberry Pi. Yeah. But yeah, so I just got a passion for Linux, and yeah, I just been learning it ever since. And and that's why I teach, that's why I say on my channel when I talk about things that I'm learning this stuff too as I go through and create these videos. I mean, it's just something I'm passionate about. Yeah, I mean, you never stop learning, you know, no matter what it is. And so um I just make these videos as I'm learning things. And 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 yeah, and that's pretty much
So
it.
I got a controversial question for you. Ready?
Okay.
Look at me in the eyes here.
I got you.
What is your favorite flavor of Linux?
Okay.
Mm,
Yeah, it's
let's
not
get
that difficult. It's my favorite flavor is Orch now. It used to be Ubuntu, but I'm an Orch user.
Boo,
Yeah, I
boo.
know.
Arch is
Yeah,
good. Arch is good. Keep on
yeah,
going.
I'm an Orch user. But
So,
when I first started,
which
the
flavor of
first
Arch?
um
Manjaro?
no, I use strictly, or yeah, the main Orch.
Oh,
Orch Linux, yeah. Yeah, and it's well, and that's the thing. After time, you get a understanding of how the operating system works. You understand, especially running into issues, and I've been using Linux for a very long time, so you get to the point where you understand how everything works, as far as like the desktop environment, the bootloaders, and all that stuff. And so Orch, you know, is essentially it would be considered a intermediate or advanced Linux operating system, but you know what I'm saying, because you have to set up everything, you know, from scratch, pretty much everything from scratch, other than the base operating system and the base kernel installed. But you have to set up your drives, you got to install a bootloader, you have to do it all, versus using a installer which comes on like Ubuntu or Manjaro. And so it was almost like a challenge. I mean, I seen somebody saying, "Hey, Arch is something, it's a little bit more difficult to install and get running, but you have a lot more control. You can install what you want on it without having to worry about extra software that you may or may not use sitting on the system." And so I said, "Hey, let me try it." And so just went through
I
the
got to give a
process.
shout out to
Install it.
ITPR guy for using Parrot, because
Oh yeah.
that's my favorite distro for
that's my favorite security distro.
for
Yeah,
I've
security.
done many of the videos on it. I love that distro.
Yeah, and
But
see,
we
I'm
do
not
have
a.
one
Oh,
here.
I'm sorry.
I was gonna say security guru guy. So he actually gives a shout out to you because he deployed an entire syslog server on SunOS, no
Wow.
Linux experience, all through the terminal, and looked at your videos.
Wow.
So and some other videos. So for giving back to the community, kudos. I mean, that's one of those things. And again, you learn by doing. So you
Yeah.
learned a lot by doing your Linux videos. And that's
Mhm.
what I love is now I don't know about in your videos if you show kind of the mistakes that are made. I'd have to go back into your, archive of all of your videos that you've done over time
All
to
the
see.
videos.
So, because a lot of people edit those mistakes out. They edit out the
Mhm.
research and the things they do, which to me is disingenuous a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I get if you're trying to build a course, but if you're trying to just do a video of things that can happen, I take the approach of if I make a mistake or if something happens, I'm gonna show you because you might
Mhm.
make the same mistake. You might run into the same problem, and so I want you to see those along the way. Even with the
That's
videos
why
I'm
his
doing now,
videos are like 3 hours long. It's
they are
like
not. They're like
they're like
15 minutes to a half
2 hours
hour.
and
Get the hell
50
out of here.
minutes of mistakes, and then 10 minutes of, oh, look, I figured it out. Yay!
but yeah, I do. I don't like videos that are just, oh, this will just work, and you're like,
Mhm.
but it didn't work. It it didn't work that way. What do you mean it just works? Like, so my question is, with your videos and the things you do, because you grew with this, I know you're not going to show, especially if something takes an hour to fix. You're not going to show the
Yeah.
whole process, right? You're going to run into a problem. You're like, shit, this might take me a while to figure out. Let me go figure it out, and then I'll explain on the back end. So as you came up, did you show all the mistakes or all the problems you ran into along the way?
Not 100%. But majority of the time I did show mistakes. And I would almost write out a script somewhat, just so I can get the most information within the shortest amount of time on the
Yeah.
video, because you don't want to make it too long, because people will lose interest. And not that I'm only concerned about people, but I want people to get the good information or get the information. And if they need help, that's why I always state, hey, leave comments down in the comments below and I can help you out as best I can. And that's serious. I've been helping people throughout this journey. They'll run into a problem that I didn't see um,
Mm-hmm.
when I did the tutorial, and I'll try to help them, or at least point them in the right direction to find a solution for the problem. Because it could be anything. It could be hardware. It could be something, something out the norm. I mean, the way Linux is, you know, uh, us three people could have the same distribution. We may run into a totally different problem um,
Correct.
Yep.
during using it or installing something or configuring something.
Yeah.
So when I do run into like a simple issue or something that I've done, like simple mistakes, then yeah, I would leave that in, just to show people that I mean, I'm not perfect.
Yep.
I don't understand. I'm always learning this stuff, as well, just with
Yeah.
you guys as well. So,
Yeah, definitely. And to me, it's a confidence builder, right? A lot of people get into this and they have imposter syndrome already. They feel like they don't belong, like they can't be here. And so that's kind of why I do the way things I do. And, kind of like you said, if it's something like long, like, it's going to take me an hour to figure out, we're just, I'll come back to that. We'll finish the video later. Then that's a whole different concept. But if it's something like, you entered this command and all of a sudden a switch doesn't work or an option or something like that, a quick, oh, they changed it. All right. Hey, this is why it works this way now. And even like I said, I started doing that. I'm going through the Linux for Hackers, Linux Basics for Hackers book by Occupy the Web. And because Kali now uses Z Shell as its default, and it's version 2022, and all these other changes have happened since the book was written. Sed does not work the same way in Z Shell that it did in Bash back when the book was written. So like those are things that I'm like, hey, I've made these changes to this book. Like you can go through the book, but if you're going through this with me, it's not going to work the same way because you're in a different shell and things like that. And even with how you were talking about people leave comments, Security Onion. I'm like, man, this is a step by step. Like I didn't skip any step along the way of this install of doing it. And people are like, it didn't work for me. And I'm like, I'm figuring out why now because I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't know why it didn't work for you. I didn't skip a step. How do you exit Vim?
Yeah, hey, I always, hey, I ain't gonna lie, and I'm sure that's from from you, Cyber Poppy. But I have to always look it up. I know it's like I don't know, shift colon and then Q.
Shift colon V
colon
Q.
Yeah, and it
depends.
depends
Are you
on
writing
if
the
you're
file or you're
saving
not, 'cause
something
it's
or
just
writing
Q.
it out. Yeah.
It's QW if you're saving it, and if
Yeah.
you're overwriting a file, it's QW exclamation point. Ignores warnings. Or if you made a change, actually no, it's Q exclamation point if you're ignoring. Like if you change something, you're like, screw it, I don't want to change that. Then you just do Q exclamation point and it escapes out and reverts it back. But QW writes it. How do you exit Nano? I don't know. I don't use
You
Nano.
X out of it.
Yeah.
There you go.
No, I'm
Leonardo
okay, there you
put.
go.
That's my
And then
favorite.
you-
See, and that's the thing. I learned Nano as the first text editor, so I just always use that.
You
also turn off the PC for Nano.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so for people who are watching the show, these are all jokes that we make about Linux because there are so many packages and so many things out there that are favorite to some users, and other users don't know about it. So there's hundreds of different editors where you do your stuff, but the main ones are the older ones is Vim, which is the old-fashioned one that we actually had in Unix, and now there's more modern ones, but those are the jokes that we're making here, so just catching people on that might not know.
Yeah, definitely. I'm look, I'm a VS Code fan. That program has grown on me. I was like, this is never going to work. It's a Microsoft program. Sublime is another good one. Notepad++, depending on what you're in. I've used Atom and VS Code have been like my two go-tos for the longest time just because of their
Brackets is pretty good too.
I haven't used brackets. But yes, like Eric said, this is very much, if you're in the Linux, if you're working in Linux at all, you have to find a favorite text editor. You're going to be manipulating config files and all this other stuff along the way because it's not Windows. It's not, hey, let me install this and go. To Josh's point, it's you kind of have to learn it because you can roll your own kernels and your own distributions and all these different things because it's open source and because this capability is there, which is why personally I love Linux for security people. Because guess what? Not every operating system is the same. Parrot, Kali, Ubuntu, I think Mint, and so many others are actually based on Debian. Yep. So they come with APT as the package manager and things like that. Then you have Arch with Pacman as its basic package manager. And then you have the enterprise version, which is Red Hat. And that has Yum and NPM as its package managers. So if you are installing things isn't as simple of click of the button. It's I have to go out, know what the package is called, and install it, and actually find it, and hope it's in a repo somewhere that's already in my list of sources that I'm gonna grab it from.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that's why
I
love
just
Linux
love
like
saying sudo yum. Just rolls.
It is. It's crazy though. So I think in your for if you were to give anyone advice on learning Linux though, or trying to get into Linux beyond watching videos, what would you suggest as your very first distribution to get into?
Um, let's see. The one I mostly suggest to people is either Ubuntu or Mint. One of those two, you know. And I guess it all depends on what you're trying to do as well, because they have distributions for different purposes. Um, um, Now I don't want to go down that road because I don't know if you got a question about that. With the whole cybersecurity ones like Debian, Parrot and Kali later, but like I said, it all depends on what you're trying to do with it. But for beginner users, I would recommend those. The Mint, Ubuntu, and then also what's the other one? System 76 is
Pop OS.
yeah, Pop OS. Pop
Yeah.
OS as well. Those are fairly simple
No.
to use.
Hold on for a
No?
second. Let me tell
No,
Leonardo.
look at
No.
Leonardo's comment.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Arch is a bitch. I got mad. I had someone correct one of my videos because I like looking at the different offensive security distributions. And
Mhm.
so I looked at Kali.
Black
Like
Arch.
I came up on Backtrack Linux.
Oh, okay.
And I originally did an old video. I don't even know if I did a video on it. I just kind of looked at Black Arch when it first came around. And when it first came around, it had a desktop environment and all these things you could do. Well, the newest edition of Black Arch that I reviewed, which I think was about a year ago, they completely removed the desktop environment.
Wow.
Like it's like somewhat there, like it's there but not there. So it's one of those things like you got to right click to kind of find everything. And I was like, look, this operating system sucks. And I flat out put out there, I'm like, look, you do you, boo boo. If you're an Arch fan and you like this kind of thing, by all means. But me personally, I'll stick to ParrotSec. Like that is my go-to is ParrotSec for an offensive distribution and security distro all day.
And like Josh was saying, Jermaine is pulling it up here. Is Pop OS is great, especially for driver support. It's a System 76 has done such a wonderful job with that distribution to make it more of a main daily driver operating system. But yeah, it's really good, Jermaine. I think that's great.
I'm a huge fan of Ubuntu. I put that for those that are trying to be
Darren.
Windows-esque. If
Mhm.
you're trying to migrate to a Linux operating system from Windows and you don't want to like lose that look and feel, granted Windows 11 changed a lot of shit, so go buy a goddamn Mac at this point. But you know, if you're looking to keep that Windows-esque feel, I've always felt Ubuntu gave people that from like a basic user perspective. But I've never used Pop OS, so I don't know. I'd have to look into Pop OS myself to really see what it is.
It's essentially Ubuntu. It's
Okay.
essentially it's based on
Yeah.
Ubuntu. So
Now, can you tell our audience? So, Linux, as we typically know it, we've been talking about all the different flavors of there, so the distributions that come. But Linux is the operating system, the core system. And then
Yeah.
on top of the core system, we have the user, the UI, the GUI system, and they're systems that we can configure. So that's one of the things that makes Linux powerful is being able to configure things like the GNOME environment. What is your favorite environment or UI environment?
Yeah, so I've used GNOME, I've used KDE, but my favorite uh has always been I always find myself back on Xfce because
Really?
it's just
Okay.
very simple to use, very simple to configure. Not that the other ones aren't. It it is a little opened up more in my opinion than GNOME. It's a little bit more configurable.
Yeah.
Let me just say that. But Xfce he has been something I've always went back to. I really like that desktop environment,
Oh
and
yeah.
um, just to explain it more, is Xfce is really scaled down. It also it uses less resources than a lot of the other desktop environments like GNOME and KDE for sure.
When I do a
On
mint,
KDE. Yeah.
I
Hey,
always put
KDE got
XFCE.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. They did.
KDE got
You
better.
finna
Look,
come
don't
at
hate
me.
on it. I use KDE Plasma. All right. I'm like, I got the graphics card to do it. I'm doing
Yeah.
it, homie. It's coming. But yes,
Uh,
because of what you're saying with
Mm.
resources, I had to look it up, and I
on
was
an
wondering
old
what the difference
computer,
were.
Mint with XFCE is the best thing.
Yeah,
Yes,
it is.
yes,
It is.
yes.
Yep. And
But
that's
and
how I've
actually, you can
always.
even go Debian. Well,
Yeah.
any base OS. If you get away from the flavors and go with what they're based on, and that trims it down even more. So
Oh, yeah.
Arch, like you said, you build Arch kind of, from scratch to do your
Mhm.
own thing. Debian the same way. Don't go for a flavor like Mint or Ubuntu or something like that. Go get Debian and then find the repos you want and start installing things that way, or pull it from GitHub or whatever the case may be and build it from source. So there's so many ways you can do it that you can use a 20-year-old computer and put Linux on it.
Yep.
You can't do that with Windows or Mac, but you can do it with Linux.
Mhm. Yep. And just to throw this out there for people, if you didn't know, I mean, it really doesn't matter what distribution you use, because you can actually install whatever you want. A lot of these desktop environments, most of these applications are available across the Linux landscape, so to speak. You can download and install, I don't know, Mint, and then let's say it comes with the Mate desktop environment. You can install Xfce on alongside Mate. You can install KDE on side of Mate and just select it which desktop environment you want to load up when you log into it. And all your files will be there, in the same location. It's just a different programs that or creating that UI for you. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like I said, that was my issue when I ran Black Arch. And the newest one
Yeah.
is there's really no desktop environment. And somebody called me out on it. And they were like, you realize you can go to terminal, run Pacman, install any DE you want. I was like, I didn't think of that, but you're right. Like I can't even it's like it wasn't even like one of those things I could argue. But my issues with something like Black Arch was, and again, as this is a security show, yes, I will discuss all the security distributions of Linux that I fucking want. Just deal with it. So Black Arch was very bloated, more so than Kali is. Kali at its full install was bloated. Black Arch, I felt, was even more so. That like I couldn't even navigate all the programs that were there and applications to do security work. ParrotSec, and the reason why I've always enjoyed it is it was built user first. So you didn't get a root account. You had a user account always to log in, and you had a sudo to root. Kali fixed that in a later distribution, but ParrotSec was the first. And then they also had an on mode, which ran you over Tor for all of your connections. So it was the first one to tie you in and say, hey, click a button and we're going to anonymize all your traffic. Now, anybody who knows Tor, look, it's not truly anonymous. It's close, but there's a lot of things you still need to do. So please don't go on Tor and be like, I can do whatever the hell I want, because they're going to catch you. But it did things and it took steps towards privacy that other distributions did not. And that was one of my main driving factors behind Love and Parrot, was because of that fact. And looking at Kali and Black Arch, like, I don't even know what to do with all these programs. So what's your daily driver right now?
Oh, it's Orch with the
Is it
Xfce desktop environment. And I've been using it for a while. I don't want to, I don't know, mess with it too much. Because one time I messed up my system where I couldn't record properly, and so I was down for like a week trying to get this thing figured out. I just stick with what I know works. Especially like I've ran into issues with the with my video editing software, which I use Caden Live. And just to show, just say to everybody, I use, I love it. I love
So
it.
are you using anything like Time Shift or something for your computer so that you can save your backups?
What I do for backups, and actually I have a script out there for anybody interested in it, but I use and I haven't touched it in a while. I got to pull up my script now and see
That
if it's
means
still
you're
working.
not doing
Well,
your
no,
downloads. You're down.
but you can back up Linux without you can back up Linux just using rsync. In a lot of cases, that's what I do. What I used to do until I wrote this script that I use, and I normally plug in a hard drive. That's why it hasn't been running, because I haven't plugged in my hard drive. I got to get a new hard drive. But a lot of stuff is on my cloud, my little personal cloud here at the house. But OrSync is perfect for you. You can use Time Shift, but OrSync, once you learn the command, it's awesome. You know, you can do
Well, that's what
incremental
Time Shift
backups.
is. It's
Yeah, essentially.
packaged rsync.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know. I've used it once or twice, just showing people how to actually use it, but I've never used Time Shift, for my main system. I've always used OrSync because I know it works in, I don't know. I get in the habit of using
If it works,
or not
don't
changing.
break
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I got to ask, because you're using
Mhm.
Arch and Xfce and you're using Caden Live, and I loved Caden Live.
Mhm.
I used that for probably the first, I don't know, maybe 50 to 100 videos I did was using Caden Live and everything like that. But with that, I learned that the graphics drivers within Linux, and I used Ubuntu and Parrot. I never used Arch for it. So by all means, if you found a way for Arch and Xfce to utilize your graphics card the way Mac and Windows can, please let me know. But when I would render videos, it would take double the time of the video. Whereas on Windows and Mac, it takes half the time, the length of the video. So what is your take? Are you using the full length of time to render and or more, or is it actually less than the recording time?
I'm actually able to use my graphics card with Katie.
God damn it!
Caden
Teach
Live.
me how. Teach me your ways.
Yeah.
Keep
It's in the settings. Come on, man.
No, it's not. It is. Look, I've used everything and told it to use the graphics card, but I had an AMD at the time. So,
well, and I have an AMD as well. I think it has something to do with the drivers that I have installed, because I didn't have to troubleshoot it or work on it in order to get it to work. It just works. And I hate to give you that answer, but it works.
You've got
I
to
installed
learn
that
yourself,
AMD.
Mr. Cyber Warrior. You've got to
Yeah.
learn yourself.
oh no,
installed those
look,
AMD.
I Googled and I tried everything, and then finally I was on a call with Shannon Morse, and I was like, "What do you use for your editing?" She goes, "Windows and Adobe," and I was like, "Fuck it, that's what I'm doing." Boot it into my Windows, and I've been on Windows ever since. I still love Linux. Wished I could use it as a daily driver, but between my video editing and the little clips I put out and everything like that, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just stick to what works, and I don't have to make it work. And I'm someone that loves Linux. I just didn't have the time of day to be like keep messing around. And I tried 2 different Debian-based distros, Ubuntu, which has drivers where things actually go, "Oh, you're running Ubuntu? All right, cool. I got a driver for you, homie. Here you go."
See, Darren supports what I said.
Try
harder there.
Don't give me that bullshit. Look, hey, I got my certification. I tried hard.
Come on.
All right.
Yeah.
They don't offer that certification for video editing in Linux. All right. I'll just have you know.
Tremaine tells you, try Pop-Up OS. It has all the drivers.
If it's not on Ubuntu, it's not going to be on Pop OS. Yeah. I'm just going to put that out there. Ubuntu has become, I'm running a 3060, Maddox. I'm running a NVIDIA 3060 now. I got lucky. New wig. 70. All right, look, you got one model higher. If it ain't the 3090, I don't want to hear shit, Eric.
I don't have that kind of money. I don't got Josh's kind of money.
Oh no,
Right?
man, no.
Josh is sitting there like, look, I got two 3090s. I got a custom
Nah.
built computer that can do a million different things. But you know what? I put Linux on it for shits and grins because I just feel like it.
No, I got a 2060. The Nvidia
Yeah.
RTX 2060. So nothing major. I tend to, well, I guess I got into buying gaming computers a lot more because they come with
Yeah.
those graphics cards for the rendering, So
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah, and that
idea.
was my big thing was the graphics card and the fact
Mhm.
that it works both ways because those graphics cards not only help you with rendering, but in our space, especially because for a while I was a full-time pen tester and that's what I did. When you're looking at password cracking and different things that the graphics card can do,
Jack the
that
Ripper.
graphics card is vital
Mhm.
to security and vital to video editing. Now, if you're only a graphics editor, then a NVIDIA Quadro is technically the route you want to go.
Mhm.
Like, if that is your whole lifeblood, you either want a Mac or a NVIDIA Quadro. Like, those are the two routes that you go for if that's all you do is like full blown editing.
Mhm.
And I only know that because I've worked with editors and they love their Quadros, but they don't game at all. They just number crunch. That's all they do. So, yeah, but I don't know, man. Like, I look at Linux as one of those things that I love. And it's one of those because it takes that mind to learn and not just take things for face value.
Yep.
So Windows we take for face value. What you see is what you get. There's no changing it. Mac the same way. So with Linux, there's so much more you can do to manipulate the operating system and manipulate your view of it that Windows does not give you.
Yep.
So what is your driving factor behind sticking with Linux? Is it that open source that I get to do whatever the hell I want, or is it more the I've been on it so long at this point because I fell in love with it and just I don't know why anymore?
To me, it's a couple of things. The freedom, you're allowed to basically do whatever you want with the operating system, and you don't have to worry about some uh evil corp or some corporation out there
You said it right the first
pulling
time. You're good.
pulling pulling data from your system, and you really don't have any ownership of the operating system at all. You're just kind of leasing it, or
Yeah.
however they want to call it. But you have a lot more freedom with Linux. You can control pretty much anything that you want to do on the operating system. You just got to learn how to do it. And of course, another thing that keeps me on Linux or keep me using Linux is because I use Windows on a daily basis at my job. And I don't know. After a while, I guess I'm just to the point where okay, Windows is really not that difficult. It's just something I do for work. This
Mhm.
is where the fun happens. This is where the magic happens on Linux, at my system at the house. So that's one of those things that keeps me going with it. I enjoy it, everything about it, and it's just something, I guess I've become passionate about it. And I still remember when I first um, um, installed Linux for the very first time, and I put Compass on there. On the actual operating system, and I had the spinning desktops, and it's just
Yeah.
awesome, bro. It's just yeah. So that I don't know that I don't
Hey,
know.
we've
It's
got a
just
question for you
nostalgic.
here.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
What's down
If
for
you
those? What we
went with
got? We got
Linux due to its customizability, what part of the OS do you want to customize? Hence, your choice to use Linux. What is the one thing you customize in the OS?
everything.
um, um, if it's something that I could customize, or is it? Hold on. Let me go back to that
Yeah,
question.
here you go.
Okay. All right. I see it. If you went from Linux due to its customization, what part of the OS? Um, I don't know. I mean, every time I install the operating system, I mainly do a lot of little customizations to the desktop environment, just to make it look the way I like it and to work with my workflow, or help my workflow. So that's typically what I do when I install the operating system. I customize the desktop environment. That's mainly where my customization happens. Um, if that makes sense, if
Yeah.
that answers this question. Okay.
Yeah, and again, and it makes a lot of sense because on Windows, I think Windows 7 was the first one to come out with like the little widgets on the side.
Hmm.
I want to say it was 7. It might have been Vista, but I think it was 7. They came out with widgets, and then they got rid of them. They were like, these are vulnerable. There's all these issues. We're gonna drop them. And which really made me mad because I really liked the sticky pad widget that they had.
Oh
I
yeah.
was like, I love this thing, man. Take some quick notes. I don't need to open Notepad. It's just right there. Things I need to do. And then they brought them back with, I think, at least Windows 11. I don't know if it's on Windows 10. But so I started using them again. But yeah, being able to, especially when you live in a terminal, and as someone who loves working from a terminal screen and not a GUI, being able to customize your terminal, being able to customize everything that you see on your screen. You're not limited to what Microsoft allows. You're able to legitimately go in there and say, you know what? If I open up a terminal screen, I want it to welcome me. I want it to show me all the stats of my operating system. I want it to show me what drive and directory I'm in. I want it to do all these things. And that is what Linux gives you. And here's Dancing Granny. Of course, people had to ask for Dancing Granny. I love this question. So I don't know if you're going to answer this question, Josh, but we're going to try.
Let's go for it.
Could you say Linux is more vulnerable due to it being open source? I'm going to put a stop to this one, but I'm going to let you give your 2 cents first, Josh.
Okay. Nah, I don't think it's more vulnerable because essentially you have more eyes on it. That's the simple answer to it. You basically have more eyes on it. And that's what is one of the benefits of open source technology. Um, there are bad actors, there are good actors. It's a lot more good actors involved in open source software that's being developed out there. And and also, a lot of times they use the version control system, so they control a lot of people that's been around and have provided trusted changes to the source code of the operating system. Um, you know, they're able to control the changes as they come in. Things don't get approved. Things don't get added to the Linux kernel as much as possible. It's controlled by the people, um, versus Windows. It's controlled by a corporation. A small set of people can see it. You know what I'm saying? So that's the biggest difference. Is the amount of eyes that are on the software to make sure it's not doing anything nefarious. And when most of the time in the open source community, when they find out about something, it's fixed, rather quickly.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I definitely feel open source. And look, I used to be on the opposite side. My opinion for the longest time, as much as I loved open source, I was like, man, if it's open source, doesn't that mean if anybody can submit a PR or somehow a PR gets through and all of a sudden now we got this, vulnerability or this exploit in the code itself that, is dangerous. But then the more I thought about it and the more I've lived in that space, the people take so long to look at that code and so many eyes get put on it that legitimately within minutes, if not maybe a day at the longest, it's looked at and they're like, hey, this is no, please revert this change, kick back out your updates, like kick these people out and everything like that. And the open source community as a whole, and again, like you said, it's not everybody. There are going to be bad actors. I think there's been some open source code. There's been POCs for exploits that have gone out there that actually exploited your system when you ran it. Like
Well,
it was.
I don't know if you guys know right now, there's the Linux exploit called Symbiote
Hmm.
or Symbiote. That is a current vulnerability that has been around since 2021, but it has been made public in the last couple days. So if you want to look about what that vulnerability is doing, which was initially to target Latin American financial institutions, now it's out in the wild. So please take a look at Linux vulnerability symbiote. It's a really bad one out there that people are trying to fix right now. So
Yeah, and definitely, and we've got, man. Look, I don't know where this data gone has come from, but thank you, homie, man. It's been. I don't think I very rarely see people on Twitch coming out with a bunch of comments. So it's great to have him here. So he has one more. A good example of open source is he said Elon wants to open source the code for Twitter.
Yeah.
I think that would be great, personally, because then you get your issues, you could hear from the public, you can actually get, things like that responded to. Josh, what's your take? Do you think open sourcing these things would be good?
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna add to what you were saying. Like a lot of these companies that used to be against Linux, like i.e. Microsoft, are finally starting to come around and understand the importance of open source, software and the open source community as a whole. They're starting to embrace it. Even though it seems like they might be doing something under, I don't trust them. But it seems like they are embracing the open source community and actually because I think they have a distro, I believe, coming out. I know Amazon does. They have a new Linux distro, I know for sure, that they
And
use in the cloud. And
Microsoft got married to Ubuntu, and
yeah,
they're having sweet babies right now, and
exactly.
they open source PowerShell, so
Hmm.
that's now available on Linux. At least Debian. I don't know if it's all Linux distros, but at least Debian based, because that's what Ubuntu is. You can get PowerShell. So
Yeah.
they're all. I think the open source community is going to be able to call them on a lot of their shit, a lot of
Yeah.
their. Hey, why is my data coming back to here, here, and here? Hey, why is my IP getting callbacks for here? And they're going to be able to finally, without, running network sniffers, just be able to look through the code and see actually what it's doing.
Hmm. Exactly. So I think it is something I think that can help.
Yes, for sure. I think open source, I think it all lends to the community, because even when you're looking at things such as like encryption algorithms, they tell you don't
Mhm.
rule your own. You should work and open source it and all these other things. Like, you should have a million eyes on it to make sure all these different things can happen. And I feel software should be the same way, because you can start looking at the vulnerabilities within it. Although Jermaine says it right here, and unfortunately he's not wrong. Capitalism is much harder to deal with open
Yeah.
source. And look, I got to be honest, you're not wrong, except for the fact that now Windows has basically, although Windows 10 was technically supposed to be their last operating system, and then they came out with 11, so Lord only knows. But, these operating systems are no longer making money from the operating system itself.
Yeah.
They're making money from the ads and the data that they're
Services.
harvesting from it. So
Mhm.
I think that the operating system side is going to lend more open source. Data
Yeah.
side is always going to be there. Eric, you got something to say, because I can see you.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Continue. Look at that. This is conversation that I'm quiet.
I know, right? For once. Oh, did I say that out loud? But no, so look, we got about 2 minutes left, Josh, till the top of
Okay.
the hour. And I want your take. Like I said, this whole episode is IT and Linux, and I think they're a very merry couple, or at least should be, right? We should have more Linux and companies and organizations and IT in general. But saying that, what do you think, if you could give advice to anybody beyond watch your YouTube channel? If you have not subscribed to Keep It Techie, please head over and do so after the show. If you could give advice to anybody getting into IT in Linux, in cybersecurity, what advice would you give to them?
My advice is find what you're passionate about, because that'll get you further than just kind of chasing money, like what we talked about earlier. And I didn't think about saying until I thought about what we talked about earlier. Yeah, just find what you're passionate about. I mean, what's that saying that you hear a lot of people say? If you find something you're having fun, I mean, you never work a day in your life again, or something to
Yeah.
that effect.
Yep.
When you find something you're passionate about, I mean, it doesn't feel like work at all. You know what I'm saying? It's just something. Yeah, you wake up every day and you're doing something fun that you enjoy. You know what I'm saying? And obviously, it's money in it, because a lot of people already talk about that on the internet. You know, you can make a lot of money in the IT field, but definitely find something that you're passionate about. That way, it'll make it easier on um, you know, moving up in this field as well as being successful.
And, Kevin says it real good here. You're a very humble guy. So, you play yourself down, but your Linux course is amazing. So we need more of that. And I encourage anybody that's watching us today, please navigate to Keep It Techie on YouTube and all the other platforms, and check out his Linux course because it is top notch. And once you're there, he does a lot of interviews with people, and there might be a face you recognize from one of his interviews.
Yeah, definitely. So I would definitely say this between Keep It Techie. I think it's Linus Tech Tips. There's a few others. So if you're interested in Linux, there's a lot of creators out there. I myself have been going through every week Linux basics for hackers. Um, Follow them all because we're all going to give you a different perspective. You're
Yeah,
going to
correct.
be able to take information from everybody, and that's one of the biggest things you can take from any creator is that they're giving their perspective on how they learn and how they're going to teach. You may not catch on right away, so watch somebody else, see how they learn and how they teach, and just bring it all together, and eventually it'll stick. You just got to find the way that you learn best and who explains it best at the level you're trying to learn. So I will say that. So before I sign us off, the Cyber Papa, go ahead, give us some words because I know you got a lot of big news.
Oh man, we've got a lot of big things happening with Raíces Cyber tomorrow at 2 p.m. So everybody please come to our Discord. The link is here. Go bio link Raíces I, just CY. And there's a link there to join our Discord tomorrow at 2 o'clock. We're gonna have a talk basically on an event on building your own security cyber lab at home. So there's going to be a lot of folks going in there 2 p.m. As Leonardo, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please go ahead and do that. Navigate to there. Raices just is announcing that now we have a new chapter for Raices in Central Maryland. So that brings us up to 10 local chapters across the United States. And we're working on 3 more in Texas and California. So we're growing. The organization is growing. We're going to be going to CyberJitsuCon next Saturday. So keep an eye on our social media because we're going to be streaming with a lot of the folks that are going to be in CyberJitsuCon next week, as well as we're going to DEF CON and we're going to be streaming from DEF CON. We're going to be on part of the Black Girls Hack Village, so diversity in action. So it's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on our Discord. The link is right here. Please come join us. It's for everybody. So with that, pass it back to you, Mr. Cyber Warrior.
Yes, definitely. Hey, if you haven't checked out Raíces Cyber, please go ahead and do so. Amazing organization. Black Girls Hack, another one. Women Cyber Jitsu, women There's Wysis and so many others. Please check
Yep.
out these organizations. They are trying to do so many amazing things. They truly, truly are. So if you haven't done so, please go check them out. Once again, Josh, thank you for joining us today. It has been amazing having you on here. I am a very, very big proponent of promoting other content creators because I know how hard it is to make the content, distribute the content, and get your name out there. What a lot of people don't realize is the amount of engagement it takes, because people like myself and like Josh and like Eric and so many others out there, if you don't like, or I don't care if you don't even fucking dislike a video or comment or share, these videos don't get out there. Other people can't see them. So please, if you're listening to this on podcast, please head over, share it from YouTube, Twitch, whatever the case may be. Like, comment, and subscribe, because it helps us get this message out there to so many others. If you are trying to avoid that because you're anonymous and you're like, I don't want people to see my name, you're really hurting the people that you're listening to. So please, I don't care if you have to create an anonymous account, go and help these creators out. Shannon Morse, Keep It Techie, Djax Alpha, Ty Wilson, Alyssa Miller. There's so many other great ones out there. So please help them out. Eric, I mentioned you already. Hush your mouth. Eric. But saying that, it has been an amazing episode. Once again, Josh, thank you for joining us. I am the Cyber Warrior. This is the Cyber Papa. We got the one and only Keep It Techie below. And this is Security Happy Hour presented by CyberWarriorStudios. Without further ado, look, I love you all. Take care. Enjoy your weekend. And I'll see you all in the next one.